Now, moving on to his previous team, the Ravens. Ravens versus the Rams. So the Ravens became the second team to reach the double-digit victories in the first one in the AFC in the 2023 season. They defeated Matthew Stafford and the LA Rams, which still, even after this time, still feels a little bit weird to me. Still to say the LA Rams, just super strange. 37-31. Lamar Jackson moved to 10-0 against NFC opponents at home. He completed 24 out of 43 passes for 316 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception, and then he also led the Ravens, of course, in rushing with 70 yards on 11 carries. OBJ was pretty efficient, 97 yards and a touchdown on 4 catches. Isaiah Likely, big fan of Isaiah Likely, 5 catches, 83 yards, and a touchdown. But I don't think anybody cares about that. I just think people care about it was an exciting game, and they care about that punt return. And the funny thing about that punt return is Wallace was only doing the punt returns because Devin Duvernay was out. It's the only reason why he was even returning punts is because Devin Duvernay was out. It's weird how in football weird things line up to where they only started this one particular game and did this one particular thing because of this one particular play. I mean, you can go back and say the same thing about Tom Brady, right? Tom Brady only touches the field because, Drew Bledsoe gets hit as hard as he did and he gets injured and Tom Brady touches the field for the first time and the rest is history, right? So this is just another one of those things. Wallace touches the field because Devin Duvernay is out with a back injury. It just John Harbaugh going and trusting him to make those plays is pretty incredible.
Are there any more exciting plays in the NFL than special teams plays? Did you see the 49ers
I don't think so.
punter take off on his own during that game and for like a 40-yard
he was
run?
asked
And
about
he was like, I just saw green and I went.
Yeah, I went for it. Yeah.
Kyle Shanahan's never called a fake punt in his career, just so you know, as the 49ers head coach. So, yeah, I'm watching that game at work, and I'm in a brand new building at work, and so I have my phone set up to the side. And the 49ers game starts at 1:05. So I switch over to the 49ers game, obviously, and a couple minutes later, all of a sudden, like 3 guys come running through the showroom floor with their hands in the air screaming, 3 of my guys. And so I look down at the 49er game, and Christian McCaffrey had just busted that 70-yard run, first play of the game. I was like, oh, wow, that's cool. They're excited for the Christian McCaffrey run, right? And then they came running into my office like, did you see that? Did you see that? Did you see that? I'm like, yeah, he got caught. It wasn't that exciting. What are you talking about? And then they left my office. It wasn't until about 10 minutes later that I got the rundown of what had happened on the punt return and saw it back. And I was like, that is in. But of course, it's the NFL, man. That's why we play the games. That's why we don't just, send the guys to the Super Bowl to decide everything. You got to play the games because stuff like that happens every week. And that's why it gets, 15 to 18 million viewers every week, while other sports can only draw, 1 to 2 million. So
I think this season's really exciting because not only have we talked about how it's a weird season for quarterbacks, and that's why we can have the discussion about wide receivers or running backs winning the MVP, right? First time for a wide receiver maybe to ever win the MVP, or first time since 2012 for a running back to get any type of real consideration. This was only the 4th NFL punt return for a touchdown in overtime ever. And this was the 2nd, 2 of them for this season. This one this past week, and week 1 was the opener with the Jets and the Bills, where Aaron Rodgers got hurt and they still won that game, where Xavier Gibson took that punt return to the house. So that's why I find this season kind of exciting, because it's odd and it's still really exciting. It's not odd in a boring way. Like, we have really bad quarterback play, which we will talk a little bit about the quarterback play and the injuries and kind of a lot of the stuff that's gone on this season, but we have exciting stuff still happening, whether it's only the 4th, punt return touchdown in overtime, or we have a guy breaking this pick 6 records, or we've got a lot of stuff going on this season. And I don't know if it's talked about how good the season really has been for the NFL.
I will sum up the Ravens-Rams conversation with one thought on Lamar Jackson. I'm a big Lamar Jackson fan. I always have been. I argue with certain people about him all the time, about what I think he brings to the table. Lamar Jackson would probably be the league MVP this year, if not for the fact that so many of their games have been sewn up by halftime or midway through the third quarter that he just didn't need to put the stats on to win the game. If he had more games that were close, like this past game, And the reason why I know this is because I've started him as my fantasy quarterback all year, and there's been times where by halftime the game's over, and part of his dynamic, play is his running game. By the time the first series of the third quarter is over, he's not running the football anymore because he doesn't need to. They're not pushing the
No.
ball; they're really just pounding the rock to win the game. So one side note on the Ravens and the potential threat that they bring to the Niners or the Cowboys or the Eagles or I guess the Lions potentially in the Super Bowl is that that's a really good squad that's gone under the radar this year a lot because so many of their games are
Yep.
just over. You don't get the eye popping stats like you got last week. And, last week you got a Hall of Fame talent in Matt Stafford. And when you got Matt Stafford over there and he's healthy, games are never over. But you saw what Lamar Jackson could do if he needs to. And just too many times this year, he just hasn't needed to. So his statistics are pedestrian because only a handful of his games has his play even mattered in the fourth quarter. So,
Yeah, looking at the box scores for these games, they have a 25-9 victory over the Texans. They have a 28-3 victory over the Browns. They have a 24-16 victory over the Titans, a 38-6 victory over the Lions, 31-24 against the Cardinals, 37-3 against the Seahawks, 34-20 against the Bengals, 20-10 against the Chargers, and then obviously their last week as well, 37-31, which is a little bit closer. But we talked about it last week. Is you asked me if the Ravens actually do scare me, and this is why. If you look at those NFC teams specifically, how bad they're just beating them up, man. I mean, 38-6 on the Lions. And then what was the other one was bad? 37-3 against the Seahawks. I mean, we had a good game against the Seahawks, man, and they absolutely just beat them up. I mean, curb stomped them, threw them out, threw them in the trash, then went back to the dump to go get them and then beat them up again. So that's why they scare me, is because of what they do to the NFC. I don't know what Lamar Jackson has against the NFC teams specifically, but he really doesn't like them. I mean, one loss out of his entire career against NFC teams, and it was to the goddamn
well,
Giants,
hey,
which anything can happen on
Lamar
Sunday.
Jackson said, "Hey, you know what? I'm a superstar against the Cleveland Browns. I'm the best player on this field. I'm going to show you." And that game was over by halftime. And then the Cleveland Browns, you know, shut the 49ers down and beat us because we missed a field goal at them. But Brock Purdy was absolutely terrible in that game. He led us in the fourth
Yeah.
quarter all the way down to try to win it. But Lamar Jackson said, "You know what, man? I'm an NFL MVP. I'm one of the best superstars in this league." And the Browns, you know what? We're going to wrap this up by halftime. So I'm with you. The same thing with the Seahawks thing. Like I'm looking over there and the 49ers have some history with Lamar Jackson with the defense they run and the players they have. And it was not pretty last time. And the one thing about it is they're coming to Levi's and the Super Bowl is in a warm climate. So you don't have to deal with the cold and his, the 49ers defensive line, the Cowboys defensive line, the Eagles defensive line is very, very fast. And
we're talking about deep, a lot of depth in that defensive line too. It's not like guys get tired.
Yeah.
That's why we have us three, our teams have the three best defensive lines because they're deep defensive lines. They don't get tired. You don't see it's late in the season where other defensive lines and other defenses are getting tired by now. They're having a lot of injuries. We don't have that because we can rotate our guys in and out so often. We don't get a lot of that stuff.
Well, we take Chase Young off the field and we put Randy Gregory on the field. So, I mean,
yeah.
The funny thing is like you're looking at the stats and it's like, oh, Randy Gregory has 3 sacks since we traded for him. That's okay. And then you look at it, it's like, oh, he's got a pressure rating of like 46% when he's on the field. Like he's been incredible. Chase Young has been incredible, but that DN spot, it's Cleveland Farrell, Chase Young, Randy Gregory, and they just keep rotating. And then you can throw 3 guys at Nick Bosa. You can throw 3 guys at Micah Parsons if you want, but there's another dude over there that's an all-pro, Pro Bowler, potential Hall of Famer that's coming after you also. So The thing with Lamar is I think more so than in previous years, the 49ers, the Cowboys, they've played the games against Jalen Hurts. Now Lamar is faster, but prepared. Those 2 defenses are prepared if they run into. Of course, the Ravens might roll into Levi's on Christmas Day and ruin my Christmas and beat us by 21 points. But frankly, the way these teams are all playing right now is I think that the NFC championship game is going to be your Super Bowl And then the Super Bowl 2 weeks later is just going to be kind of a crowning the uncrowned at that point. But we'll see. That's why we play the games. And that's why we do this podcast, so I can say crazy shit like that. And then people can laugh at me later when the
Right.
Bengals win the Super Bowl with Folsom High's Jake